Convicted killer Oscar Pistorius' parole has been denied. This year marks a decade since the Paralympian fatally shot his then-girlfriend, Reeva Steenkamp. Let's get some reaction now from legal practitioner Mpumelelo Zikalala. Very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. The parole board has cited that Oscar Pistorius has not completed the minimum detention period of his sentence. Let's maybe start there. Some clarity on how the time frames in detention periods would be allocated.
Now, that is governed by the Correctional Services Act that says it's either you serve 1/3 or 1/6 of your sentence and then you're eligible for parole. But it does not mean that when you've served the minimum sentence that you can go on and apply. There are lots of other things in which the case management committee will then look at before it considers it. I think in this case, what the board is saying that for us, the amount of time that you have served is important to us. Let's look at it now. Don't make the mistake of calculating it from the day in which you was first ordered to go to jail, where you received, I think it was 5 years in terms of his sentence. Calculate it from the later one, the date in which the SCA then issued that order. Of course, the amount of time that you had served earlier will be accounted for. But I think the parole board was saying that we will start counting from 2015 or 2017, if I'm not mistaken. That's the time in which we're going to start to count from. And for us, we do not think that you've served the minimum sentence as prescribed by the Correctional Services Act.
And if Pistorius had not served the prescribed time, I suppose the big question here is why was there a parole hearing to begin with?
That's the most important question, but I would understand the confusion coming from Correctional Services or officials, because they could have said, or in his application, he could have said, calculate from the time in which I was first sent to jail, as per the Gauteng High Court decision, saying that I must go to jail and serve my time. And yes, you can include all the other times, but start from that time, then moving forward. So if you look at it accumulatively, you may assume that maybe he has passed the 1/3 or 1/6 calculation which is required, but it is all up to the hands of the parole board, because they are the final arbiter when coming to decide whether someone should be released on parole or not.
Yeah. We know that Oscar Pistorius has explained his journey of rehabilitation, but perhaps some explanation from a legal perspective how this was factored into the decision not to grant him parole. I know that there were interactions with the Steenkamp family and they expressed their views saying that they don't feel that he's fully rehabilitated because there are missing parts of the story. The puzzle has not come together. They think that he hasn't told the truth.
There are many parts to the rehabilitation which is then looked at by the parole board. Yes, the time that you have served is important. The manner in which you've behaved while you've been incarcerated is also looked into it. The amount of courses and workshops that you have went to in order to try and show you that this is the way in which you ought to have behaved as a member of the public. But I think the most important one that they would have considered is the victim-offender dialogue, where they would sit down and be able to talk with the Steenkamp family. Now, if it seems that you are not really talking from the heart, you're not being sincere, or you're not disclosing all that which is required from the family so that they find the actual closure that they need, it's easier for the parole board to then come to a decision of saying, you are not really telling the truth. You're not playing ball or assisting us here. You are not taking this matter or this process seriously, because at the end of the day, it is meant to heal and not meant to mislead anyone. So if they can feel that you are really not ready or you haven't participated in any of the things that are there, then it's easy for them to then come to a decision of saying, we are not going to listen to what you are saying, or even if you've done so, we'll apply your mind, but I think we're not really right to be released on parole. It's well within their right to say so, which is why it's important that the views of the victims or the victim's family must and ought to be considered so that you are able to take a decision which is lawful. Our law is very clear. It says you remain a prisoner up until the day the amount of time that you were given by a court has been duly served. If you haven't done so, parole may be a legitimate expectation that you may get. However, it is not a right that you can exercise as and when.
So Pistorius will continue to serve his 13-year sentence, and I understand that the process will be revisited in August of 2024. What happens in between? What are the probabilities?
It does still have an opportunity of going to the parole's review board if he feels that the amount of sentence or the period in which it's been calculated is incorrect. Even so, if he fails there, you still have the minister. If you fail, the minister can even go to court, and there will be a proper calculation as to how that particular amount of time ought to be calculated. But must also remember that it is not the only factor which is looked at. So the parole board will still have to look in the matter again. But between now and then, the same manner in which we've been behaving, the case management committee will still observe and check, are you behaving in a manner that you ought to behave in? What's your interaction when it comes to other prisoners? What's your interaction when it comes to other prison warders? What sort of participation or kind of man are you when you are in prison? Are you a candidate that can be sent out to the public and be able to be a vessel of change and someone who will be able to understand their mistakes, acknowledge them, say that he is sorry, acknowledge it and admit it in front of the family? I think that's another opportunity that he's going to get, because if you go to a parole board and they tell you what is wrong, they are basically saying to you, fix this particular thing so that the next time you come here, we will fix them. So if you go to the family and you tell them the truth, I think the family is clear. All that they are saying is, tell us the truth as to exactly what happened on the day. Admit your fault. Admit the mistakes that you have done. If there's any intention that has taken place or you really intended to kill Reeva Steenkamp, say so that they can find it in their heart to forgive you if they so wish. And then you can come back and seek for parole.
Yeah, very well. Thank you so much for that clarity. Legal practitioner Mpumelelo Zikalala.